Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram mapa pravashanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravashanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. Apuryamanam, always being filled. Achala pratishtam, steadily situated. Samudram, the ocean. Apa, waters. Pravashanti, enter. Yadvat, as. Tadvat, so. Kama, desires. Yam, unto whom. Pravashanti, enter. Sarve, all. Saha, that person. Shantim, peace. Apnoti, achieves. Na, not. Kama kami, one who desires to fulfill desires. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything, because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean, and therefore enjoy real peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires, even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis, who are after mystic powers, are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapa pravashanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravashanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve real peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So this verse is actually very instructive for all of us. For it speaks about a position which is rare to be seen within this material world. And that position is how one can be like an ocean. Now, the ocean is a very big body of water. And all of the rivers in the whole world ultimately empty into the ocean. Big, big rivers, pouring millions and millions of gallons every second into the ocean. But the ocean itself is not agitated by those rivers. Even you go to the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil, where it meets the Atlantic Ocean, there's no agitation there. You don't find that the water are all turbulent and things like this. The river peacefully meets the ocean. The ocean is always being filled, but it is ever still, undisturbed. Similarly, a person has an ocean of desire. And although within his consciousness he's always having more and more desires flowing into his existence, one who's in Krishna consciousness is not agitated by those desires, where one who is not Krishna conscious is continuously agitated by more and more desires to enjoy. In other words, the more one is Krishna conscious, the less he's agitated by desires which enter into his consciousness. Now, desire must be there. There's no creature that can avoid desire. Why? Because desire is part of the spiritual being. I, the spiritual soul, who am situated in this body, am a spiritual spark who is built based on desire. After all, I come to this material world because of my desires. I stay in this body and I change my body life after lifetime because of my desires. I am desirous of attaining sense gratification. I don't completely fulfill that in this lifetime. Therefore, I have to take another body next lifetime in order to fulfill that desire. And this continues lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, as we continually try to fulfill our desires, and therefore we're always agitated in different ways. Agitated as if we were actually going to make a permanent, satisfactory position in this material world. But a Krishna conscious person, he knows that no matter how much you strive to satisfy your desires, always one will come to the point of frustration. Because there's simply no way to completely satisfy his desire. It's like a fire which can consume all logs which are thrown to it. People can go on desiring for thousands of years and not be satisfied. Go on trying to enjoy the material world again and again and still not be satisfied. This material world is like that. It's a place where satisfaction is difficult to come by. Now, there's three kinds of happiness. And these are known according to the modes of material nature. The modes of material nature mean those characteristic ways of action in the material world. Those characteristic ways in which the energy of the material nature work. There's the mode of goodness, which is illuminating, brings knowledge, brings elevation, brings happiness, brings peace. Good qualities develop in this mode. The mode of passion, the next mode, which is very much desire for sense gratification, for accomplishing things, for enjoying various parts of the material nature. It's characterized by a lot of endeavor, a lot of activity, and a lot of frustration. And the mode of ignorance, which is characterized by sleep, madness, these very low-class qualities. So we find these three modes of nature are there, and there are similarly three types of happiness in these modes of nature. In the mode of goodness, the activity starts off as Maybe you could just take the telephone off the hook and forget about it for a couple of hours. In the mode of goodness, the activity starts off to be a little bit bitter. It's described in the beginning, the activity one performs may feel like poison almost. But in the end, it turns into nectar. In the mode of passion, in the beginning, it tastes like nectar, but in the end, it turns into poison. And in the mode of ignorance, in the beginning it's poison, and in the end it's poison. These three ways. Now what does this mean? In the beginning, in the mode of passion, because we're all very familiar with this, we think that this activity we are performing is like nectar. It is wonderful. Just like one who's drinking alcohol or taking some drugs, or overindulging in various pleasures, whatever they may be. Anything too much of a good thing is bad. Even eating, if you eat too much, then you just get sick of it after a while, and it gets bad, and it becomes like a torture if you have to keep eating. So, in the beginning, these things may seem like nectar. But as one continues with these things, they gradually turn to poison. This is called the mode of passion. In the beginning, everything's very wonderful. Just like we find amongst those who are drunkards or persons who take too much heroin or any of it. In the beginning, it's like nectar, like heaven, wonderful. But then by continued usage, gradually it starts to wear one down. Everything's like that, even sex life. In the beginning, it's just wonderful, fantastic. But after some years continuing, then it gets to be like some kind of a poison after a while. Believe it or not. Just like, for instance, disease comes. We find so many diseases are coming. Also, as one gets older, it gets very difficult for him. In other words, just sometimes people, they're just having sex day and night, night and day, day and night, as much as they can. And it turns into some kind of a problem in their mind. Various problems arise, psychological problems. Although nobody likes to admit it. If you ask anybody in the world, hey, how's your sex life? He'll immediately say, fantastic, wonderful, top class. Immediately, no matter who it is, he'll say it's fantastic. But in fact, the psychiatrists report that more than 70% of the problems in their offices are because people are unable to enjoy sex life. Marriage counselors, almost all of the problems are because of the husband and wife can't enjoy sex life. And so much depression and insanity because people are having so much trouble with sex life. It's a shocking thing. Of course, maybe we believe, maybe not. But when you start seeing some statistics on the mental difficulties that people have, and when you get to know, for instance, some of your friends, for instance, who, in a moment of rare honesty, might actually tell you their frustrations. Because everybody's always thinking that if I can just get this, then I will enjoy. If I can just get this, then I will enjoy. But in fact, even sometimes they get that which they most want, and the whole thing is a complete failure. It doesn't give them satisfaction. And sometimes you get some satisfaction for some amount of time. That's the material world. It's a place where you can enjoy something for some small amount of time, and basically one has to struggle for a large amount of time to get this small amount of enjoyment. That is what it means by acting in the mode of passion. In the beginning it seems great, and in the end it turns to some kind of poison. This body is the perfect example of this. Now, almost everybody in this room is young. Even if you're old and you're in this room, you're young. So, almost everybody is young. So, Now, we think in the beginning, this body is just great. Let's go enjoy this body, run here and there and do this and that. As long as you've got a young, youthful body, it's okay. You can just keep on going. Very nice. In the beginning, it's like nectar. You can do what you want with this body. However, after a short period of time, the body starts to slow down. It's no longer able to enjoy as much as it wanted to. It's no longer able to go on in the same way. You have to start slowing down. Just like every man finds out about the age of 31. I suppose it's about the same for the girls, isn't it? That all of a sudden, you can't digest so fast anymore. And you start to get fat. It's called the middle-age bulge. Where instead of all the food just getting burned off, it starts to make some fatty substances everywhere. Yeah. So one has to cut down his eating. And the other things which he used to do, or like anything to enjoy, he has to start cutting those down too. And gradually, as the body gets older and older, we have to start cutting down this and cutting down that. Used to be when you were young and you wanted to have a good time, you just run into the park and start throwing the frisbee around or throwing the ball around or kicking it here or there. But now, when you get to be, like, say, nearing your 40 or even above 30s, you throw the ball and the arm is just finished, or you kick it, my knee. Your knee starts to hurt. Yeah. And anyway, if it doesn't hurt immediately, the next day you can't even move it. It hurts so much. So the body, it starts to break down day by day by day. And as we get 50 and 60 and 70 and 80, the body gets so old and slow, and it can't do anything very fast anymore. And if you do, you can ruin all the and arthritis and the rheumatism and problems and that's the body. And one starts to get into such a condition where he thinks this body is just terrible. It's like poison. So in the beginning, it seemed to be nectar. Young. We just love this body. We take care of this body like anything. Just make it just perfect. The girls are just making this body just first class. But after a while, it just starts to go slower and slower, and problems come. And you've seen, after all, some of these housewives in middle age. They don't care anymore what they look like. Couldn't care less. All these funny curlers coming out of the hair. All right, I'm not going to go further on this point. But I could have done a whole thing and you would have laughed like anything and it wouldn't have helped much. So, in the material world, we find that the body starts off very nice like nectar and it gradually degrades into some kind of miserable condition. So this is the mode of passion. In the beginning, fantastic. By the end, just terrible. But the mode of goodness is something different. In the beginning, it seems like poison. But in the end, it seems like nectar. Yeah. Just like when one is engaged in an activity of austerity. Now, this is not Krishna conscious, but just as an example, if you really just want to enjoy for a while in the material world, a good way to do it would be to go to the heavenly planets. Those other planets which are beyond this earthly planet. You can enjoy like anything there. Various pleasures. Everything very nice. So, to get to the heavenly planets, one has to do some austerity. He has to perform some sacrifices. He has to make offerings. He has to do fasting. He has to purify himself. He has to take care that he does everything very right according to procedures and principles. And after this lifetime of trouble, this austerity means trouble, then next lifetime, enjoy like anything. So this is an example of something which is in just the mode of goodness, where in the beginning it seems like poison, because it's austerity, it's trouble. But in the end, it turns out to be some nectar for some time, until you run out of your acquired results of good karma, and one has to fall back down again from the heavenly planets back to the earth planet. So this is a temporary situation, but it's a good example of austerity which brings some good result. Now, Krishna consciousness is a little different than that, because it's one step even above the platform of the mode of goodness, wherein in the beginning the activity may seem to be a little troublesome. Just like performing Krishna consciousness means you rise early, take a bath, chant together with others, and then listen to the classes and eat prasadam together, and then perform the daily activities. Now, in the beginning that may seem to be a little difficult, but after a short while we start to understand that this is very nice. And in fact, one doesn't even like to live one day unless he can go on with this kind of a program. In other words, very quickly it turns into nectar, and it stays that way. Of course, unless one falls into the mode of ignorance, then immediately he loses the opportunity. But so long as one can maintain himself on this higher platform, he can stay on the level of a nectarian activity. It is not that in Krishna consciousness we are struggling now for some glorious hereafter. You know, like sometimes the Christians say you struggle now in this life, and in the end you go to heaven and enjoy. But what we are speaking here is that right now you don't have to suffer. Devotees aren't suffering. They are engaged in Krishna's service. They don't have any troubles for their maintenance. They don't have any troubles for their food. They always have a shower. They always have clean clothes because they wash them. They can always have something to do for Krishna, which is satisfying. And therefore, being a devotee in Krishna consciousness is not a great struggle. The struggle is to purify the mind. That is a big struggle, because everybody's mind very much appreciates the mode of passion and not the mode of goodness. The mind wants immediate, quick satisfaction of the senses. The mind wants it all fast. There's something to eat which I can be satisfied with, stick it in the mouth. If there's some sex to have immediately, don't delay. This is what's causing the vast increase of various diseases which are transmitted from people to people all over the world nowadays. It's increasing very much. Why? Because the mind, it doesn't like to wait. It doesn't like to do any austerity. It just wants immediate satisfaction. The eye wants to see something, great, give it. In fact, we become like slaves to the senses. The tongue, if you happen to be a little hungry one day and you happen to go past some pizza parlor or something like this, and the smell just comes out the door and somehow gets captured by your nostrils, and whoops. Then the tongue is, one is dragged over by the tongue, just like clamps on the tongue, and pulled over. The nose and the tongue together just pull us towards that sensation. Or when the eyes see something which is very nice, according to the eye's idea of niceness, then they drag us somewhere. Sometimes you can see, sometimes some beautiful girl, from the male point of view, of course, walks down the street, and then some, big men, they're just captured, and they're just walking after them. So we find this is the senses. They just grab us like ropes. We get pulled like ropes. And the senses just start pulling us towards the sense objects. It's like magnets. The eye is drawn to a form, just like a magnet to iron. The tongue is drawn to good taste, like magnets to iron. You can't tell the tongue, this doesn't taste good, don't eat it. The tongue knows by the smell and the experience. If it starts to make watering sensation on the tongue, saliva comes. You can tell your tongue all you like. It's not good. It's illusion. It's illusion. It doesn't care. It knows by chemical reaction, this is gonna be good. It doesn't care if you're saying to the tongue, because you don't want to get fat, let's say. You're on a diet. So you're cutting down on what you're going to eat. So therefore, when your tongue is watering like this and just drizzling down the sides, so you tell the tongue, no, it's no good. The tongue doesn't care. It knows perfectly well this is good. Yeah? The eye knows this form is good. You don't need to learn these things. There's no school where you have to go to learn that the pizza pie tastes good. Where they put you down in a desk and they put a little pizza pie when you're a little kid. Yeah? And then the teacher writes on the board, this is pizza pie. Pizza pie is good. You like pizza pie. Eat it. You don't have to do that. Everybody knows from the beginning, this is something to eat, this is something good, stick it in the mouth and chew. That's all, finished. All sense gratification is like that. The automatic attraction between the senses and the objects. You don't have to learn it. You don't have to struggle. It's automatic. Boom, connection. And therefore, in this life, we have so many problems because we are being dragged around from here to there, to there, to there by our senses, which are looking for quick and immediate satisfaction. But in fact, although in the beginning that seems to be good, like nectar, after a while it turns into poison because we just become ruled by our senses. Every minute of every day we got to do something what the senses tell. We've seen some people can't stand to be 1 minute without something in their mouth. Either it's a cigarette, or it's a candy, or it's a gum, or it's their finger, or their nails. Something's in the mouth all the time. Because the mouth, it just wants to chew. It just got to do something. They become like completely obsessed by this, just to have the lips working and the mouth chewing. And if they're not doing any of this, they have to talk. All day long, just and you know what she said, and he said that, she said that, they said this and that, the other thing. And all day long, when it's just talking, chewing, eating, smoking, sucking, all these things are going on. This is the nature of this material world, where the senses, they're like little demons who live in our own body, who are just demanding we satisfy them. The tongue is demanding, I want to eat, you fool. Feed me. We're fighting it all the time. Yeah? So, this is a problem. Now, one who is trying to transcend this material world, tries to transcend the problems of this body, must transcend the problem of the senses pushings. They're called pushings, vegan in Sanskrit. Pushing. We have to learn the art of controlling the pushing. In other words, we should not be pushed around by our senses. Just like we wouldn't like to be pushed around by some big guy who walked in the room and said, I don't like your standing over here. Get over there. Then when you were standing over there, he goes and pushes you again. Get over there. Pushes you over there. But our senses are doing like that. The only reason we tolerate it because we think we are our senses. Because we live in this body, we think we are the body, and therefore the senses being part of the body, we think this is us. I want to see, I want to taste, I want to hear. Because the senses do. One doesn't really understand this until he tries to become self-realized. And he has some desire. I want to become self-realized. Then he has to restrict the actions of the senses because they are causing him to become covered by the material elements, the material consciousness, the material network of illusion. And as soon as one says, no, I don't want any more, then the mind starts to rebel. The mind says, what? Are you a fool? You don't want sense gratification anymore? Are you crazy? Here, look at this. And look, remember that? Ooh, that was so good. The mind pulls out pictures one after another. The mind has like a photo file. It remembers all those things which we did in the past. Every single activity, every single experience, the mind remembers. Even from previous lifetimes. And the mind starts to torture by saying, remember this. Look at that. And then you go, no, no. One starts to realize he's fighting with this body. He wants to be self-realized, but the body is saying, what are you doing? You should enjoy yourself. The mind is pushing the case of the senses like the lawyer. The mind is the Rechtsanwalt of the senses. Presenting the case of the senses. Yeah. We're telling the senses, now you be controlled. Yeah? And then the mind, now representing the eyes, says, but sir, you must consider this position here. This poor element here, these senses, the eyes. They are now being faced with one of their objects. And they want to look at those objects. They want to see those objects. Don't you have any compassion upon these poor eyes? It is their nature to see things. Therefore, you should please kindly just let the eye see this one thing, then everything will be all right. This is the mind. It acts like the lawyer of the senses and presents the case of each sense to you. And then the mind is continually telling you, it's all right, it's okay, just enjoy these things and then forget about it, then it'll be all right. So one starts to understand that the senses, they are actually different from us. Our desire may be in this direction, and the senses' desire usually is in the other direction. Because one is completely material, and our desire, when it is for such spiritual things, is actually on a transcendental platform. At that time, one can become very, very sure that he's not this body. He can become very, very convinced that the senses are different than him. And one of the most important qualities is to never be disturbed by all of the sensual desires which the mind is just representing. One may be involved in the whole material world, but if he does not get entangled with it, then he's all right, he's safe. Sometimes people, they accuse us. They say, you people, you Hare Krishna people, you are escaping from reality. Of course, my answer to that always is, well, you'd like to escape too, but you just don't know how. You escape by watching TV, going to the movies, drinking beer, doing all these things. For you, these are your escape. You want to forget about the present miserable circumstance you're in. Therefore, you do anything and everything to forget about it. That's escaping, right? Yes. But we don't do these things, so therefore we don't escape in the same way. We really escape, though. We escape like out of the escape hatch. I give them another example. I say, if your house was burning down, wouldn't you want to escape too? And if the house was burning down, and let's say it was a madhouse, and some madman came in and said, why do you want to leave? You should stay here. Don't leave. And then he wants to grab you, right? The house is burning all over the place, and you got some madman going, don't go. But that's exactly what we find in this material world. The whole material world's burning down with lusty desires. Everybody's just being consumed in this huge fire of just burning desire. And the devotees are running like mad for the fire escapes. And everywhere there are madmen saying, don't go. All these anti-sect people are running around going, don't leave. Stay here and fry with us. Yes. You have to run like mad. To escape these people, they're completely nuts. They think to stay in this material world, this is very nice. To burn to death with everybody else, this is very moral. You know? Since everybody else is frying their brains out in this fire, therefore you should do it too. That's normal. Sanity means You do what everybody else is doing. That's all. If everybody else is completely insane, then you'll be known as sane if you're also insane. That's the meaning of sanity. Sanity means you just do like everybody else and thus you're sane. But in fact, that's not sanity. That's relative, completely relative. If we think in terms of the most group of people representing sanity, then in fact, those who are Krishna conscious are the sane people, because most souls in the whole creation are in the spiritual sky with Krishna. Therefore, only the minority are here in the material world. Therefore, in fact, we are sane, if by that same definition. Because most living entities are eternally liberated, and only a few fools like us are in this material world. And amongst them, there are some who understand this position, whereby we are captured by the material nature, and we have to get out of this material nature, back to the spiritual nature. Those persons, although perhaps not yet completely free, are on the path of progressive realization, and they will come to that point of freedom in due course of time. So to want to escape from the burning fire of this material world is not a defect. It is intelligence. To want to get out of a burning house is intelligence. It's not a defect. But people in this world don't know that, because they're brainwashed by the material nature. Actually, we are very much brainwashed. From the beginning of life, when you come out of the womb of your mother, then your mother, she's always busy patting you on the head, kissing you, pulling your cheek like this, rocking you like this. Your mother, she's a first-class brainwasher for you. Now, of course, you need a mother. I'm not trying to be against motherhood. Don't get all upset. I think mothers are great. Everybody ought to have a mother. Mothers are great. Okay, but, however, they also help us to become completely convinced that we are this body. Unless you have a Krishna conscious mother, which is rare in this world, then you will be trained up from the beginning of life that you are your body. And you will be called a name, and that name will go into your consciousness, and you'll always be thinking, I am this body, this cute little fellow who everybody applauds whenever he walks in the room, who everybody picks up by the hand and bounces him up and down like this. Sometimes throw him upside down on the shoulder, put him back down again. He becomes completely convinced he's this body. Then we go to school. And there the most incredible systematic campaign of brainwashing starts, where we are systematically relieved of all independent ideas of understanding what we are. We are completely put into a program. And we are put through here, this grade, this grade, this grade. Learn this. Oh, you didn't learn this. You fell. Then you stay back. All your friends will move forward one class. You stay back. Stay back. Never. I learn it. I surrender. Yes, whatever you want. I will say it. Yes, I am my body. Yes, my body is German. The German nation started in such and such a date, and this and that happened, and this is that, and this is me, and this is my, yes, I am this, yes. And gradually we learn this. It becomes drilled in the head. We find even no matter how liberated one thinks he is from the material world, he still has all these ideas firmly in his head. When we start talking about science, that's immediately clear. Everybody's convinced he's just a pile of chemicals, and it started by chance, and it evolved from some Ursupa way back in the beginning. When my descendant was an amoeba which crawled out of the supa. Everybody's convinced everything started from a big bang explosion, and all the planets are flying all around, and completely brainwashed, everybody, into thinking these really absurd things. Then we watch TV. Ooh, TV. Ooh, how wonderful. Mankind could not have come up with a better brainwashing tool if they tried. One thinks that TV was created in Korea. where they started brainwashing. The techniques of brainwashing were started there during the Korean War. So TV and Korean War, they came pretty much at the same time. I remember watching the first TV show in 1953 or 52 in America. So at that time, there were so many shows coming out on the TV, and all of us kids, we used to sit in front of the TV 6 or 8 hours a day without stopping, just fixed like this, watching every little thing that happened on that screen as if it was the truth descending from the heavenly regions. Just watching and watching and watching and learning everything on the TV. Huh? In fact, they made a survey in America. They found that the average American child watches TV on non-school days at least 8 hours. Can you imagine that? You can't even figure out where all the hours in the day are that you can watch TV for 8 hours. Yeah? Just sitting there, fixed in front of that thing. And medical studies have shown that the thing itself, yeah? What a TV is this gun in the back, shooting electrons off of these pixels on the screen. And usually, I think on these German TVs, what is it, 340 by 640 pixels on a regular TV screen? No, it's half that. That's a computer screen. Anyway, there's a lot of dots. So all these dots, they're shooting this electron off of. And it makes a residual radiation off the top of each of these pixels. Some of it goes into illuminating that little dot, which makes the color in the picture. And the rest of it goes forward into you. Not only is it the thing itself electrically, but when you sit in front of it, it's this glass. It's got a little sheen on it. It's like watching like a dead person's eyes, The image itself makes one duller and duller. They've done brain tests on people who watch TV. And normally the wave is like very high in a normal person. But when you watch TV, it sinks down like when you're dreaming. In fact, in one study, they concluded the brain becomes even more dull than in dreaming when you're sleeping at night, when you watch TV. Yeah? People just become like dull, like anything. Yeah? Then, that's one kind of brainwashing. Then another is the newspapers. They are very expert media of brainwashing to cause one to think what they want you to think. News is always presented in a certain way. And if you dare present anything in a different way, news or knowledge or something like this, immediately you lose your job. You're immediately losing your job, kicked out of the school, kicked out of the newspaper, kicked out of the TV. Because you've dared to present something different than what they want you to know. So brainwashed by the schools, brainwashed by TV, brainwashed by the newspapers. And we can talk about every single media there is. One is brainwashed. And all the different ways in which we receive knowledge, it's all being very specifically given to cause us to act in a certain way. And what is that certain way? That certain way is that we should learn that you're meant in this world to produce as much as you can and consume as much as you can. You should produce goods, produce things, and then consume. Huh? Produce food and eat. Produce liquor and drink. Produce drugs and shoot them up. Just produce, consume. We're being trained like this from the beginning of our lives. As if this whole arrangement of production and consumption was the thing which kept the whole society going. And it is. Our whole society, as it's set up now, would collapse in 3 days if everybody gave up this stupid idea of production and consumption. If you actually made what you needed, and that's all, just what you needed in life, the whole society would collapse in a big heap. We are taught to just need so many things which we don't need. To take so many things which we don't need at all. and then to buy and consume and do so many things. And even if you can't produce, the government will give you money so you can consume. Because the whole world is built on this. Now, these points show, to a small degree, how we are being very much directed in a certain direction. And that direction is the direction of material existence, pushed that way by the whole society. And therefore, they don't like when the Hare Krishnas, for instance, do a program and tell people about the problems of the material world. Because they think if these people ever get popular, and all the people of the world realize that they don't have to spend their lives producing and consuming, the whole economy will go to hell. Therefore, we have to stop these people. And they're doing a good job, brainwashing people from the beginning of their times to understand that anything that doesn't say the same philosophy that you're your body, or you can also say you're not this body, but that while you have the body, you have to produce and consume as much as possible. If we told everybody, yes, you should produce and consume as much as possible, but you're not this body, then we'd be okay. But because we say, take up some austerity, reduce the necessities of life, live simply, but think in a very high way. Simple living, high thinking. Of course, that doesn't mean that we have to live back in the Stone Age. We're also using high technology to produce our books, for instance. We're also working on producing our show. So many things. High tech is there, big high tech. But it's not for the sake of expanding the sense gratification. It's for the sake of bringing more people into the platform of knowledge. Therefore, because the thought is very good, the thought, the knowledge which is behind it, that you're not this body, you're a pure spirit soul. You are meant for understanding your real identity. You are meant to come to the higher platform of spiritual knowledge. Because this human form of life is very rare. It shouldn't be wasted in just living a materialistic life. After all, there are 8,400,000 species of life, according to the Veda. Now, nobody's counted them. And in the evolutionary circles, they're not even sure what a species is. They're still arguing all the time on what is a species and what is not a species. But according to the Veda, there are 8,400,000 different species in the universe. And we are taking our birth throughout these different species until we come up to the human platform by the natural evolutionary cycle. And when we come up to the human platform, we have this rare opportunity to realize ourselves, and therefore it is extremely important that we take this opportunity and come to the platform of self-realization. Therefore, one should very, very seriously consider whether or not he has to remain the rest of his life in the material world and then take birth again and die again and take birth again and die again and go through this cycle of birth and death forever. Or if he should use this human form of life to get out of this cycle of birth and death and go back to the spiritual world where we belong. One should seriously consider this, whether or not he's prepared to remain in this material world or whether he's ready to make the move to the spiritual platform to come to the point of eternality, knowledge, and bliss. And one should carefully consider this point from all different points of view and come to the point of acting on that realization. Of course, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even if you can't immediately come to the point of self-realization, if you just take the chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and read these transcendental literatures, one will gradually advance. Even if it takes many years, he will gradually come to the point of this self-realization, this spiritual consciousness. But so long as one actually has some possibility to understand that this material world is not a very nice place, then he should immediately jump on that opportunity, especially in his young age. Because as one gets older, it becomes harder and harder to give up his material attachments. As one gets older, it becomes very difficult. In fact, as one grows older, he starts more and more to become captured by the conception he's his body. And there's a special age when one is still young, where he actually has the energy to take up a new way of life without being too much afraid of it. And therefore, one should, when he feels that urge, even in a small way, he should try to just expand that. When there's a little fire of realization that is burning in the heart, just fan it to make it blaze up. Because if we miss the opportunity for becoming Krishna conscious, we may lose it for a long time. Not completely, you cannot lose it completely, but one should take it so long as he can. Otherwise, if he starts to become more attached in the material world, then he falls into the brainwashing of the material nature, and then he gives up his progressive idea. In fact, Krishna conscious people are real revolutionaries, because we say no to the whole material world. We say we're not interested in your goals, and we're not interested in your motivations. We may use something from the material world, that's all right. But we're using it for different goal, different motivation, completely. This is real revolution. To make revolution with guns and go out and shoot up everybody in the street, and then put another person as president who's the same exact kind of a man, but instead of being a sense-enjoying capitalist, now he's a sense-enjoying socialist. He just changes the system within which he enjoys his senses. That's not revolution. That's simply one class of man trying to take the things away from another class of man. One man wants to be in charge instead of that other man in charge. So he makes revolution. It seems always to be very, very glorious in the beginning. But at the end, if you see what they're doing the exact same thing. But they do it in another name. It's just a change of names only. The whole material world's like that. You change names. Change isms. From this ism to that ism. From communism to capitalism to socialism to nationalism to fascism to this ism, that ism. You're just changing names. Because you always have the same thing. Somebody who thinks of himself as the enjoyer, and somebody else who he's trying to exploit for his own enjoyment. In fact, you have a world of exploiters and exploited. It's not until one comes to the spiritual platform that he finally understands what it means to not be exploited by anybody. That factually, we are all Krishna's eternal servants. And we are meant to work under the direction of Krishna. And Krishna does not need to exploit us because he already has everything. There's nothing he does not have, since he has everything already, since everything is already his, since it has already come from him. He doesn't need to take anything from us. But there's one thing he doesn't have which he wants, and that is our love. When we actually develop our love for Krishna. And that situation is far beyond any frustration of exploitation of this material world. Therefore, we recommend this Krishna conscious process as the means by which one can be freed from all suffering condition, all exploitation, all frustration. If one just sticks to Krishna consciousness, then gradually he starts to taste the fruits of very blissful activity. So, we've tried to present another some point in Krishna consciousness. Last night or the night before, I think most of you were at one of the programs. We presented some introduction. So now we've done introduction part 2. There are many, many, many points in Krishna consciousness. Last night we were expressing, or night before, wherever you were here, expressing about the points of karma, action and reaction, reincarnation, transfer of the body from one, transfer of the soul from one body to the next. Tonight we've talked a little about how the living entity is pushed into ignorant conditions, how he's brainwashed into thinking he's this body, and how the body and the senses act like a network to keep us chained to this material world. And we've talked about how the Krishna conscious person is a counter-revolutionary against these all factors of the material nature, who's working for another goal than the material goal. And we are inviting all of you to take up this way of life. First invitation is, you may kindly come and join us. We provide whatever you need. You can get some clothes, a haircut. We supply everything, no problem. You get food, you get an activity, and you get a lot of good friends. And if you like, you may just stay here, and we'll be very happy to see you. And if that's a little bit too radical, as I'm sure maybe one or two persons in the audience thinks, then you can go home with the Hare Krishna mantra. Chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Read these books at home. Figure out some way in which you can become actively engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement and gradually become purified. You're always invited to come and stay here for a while, or come just for a nice meal and something to do during the day. And gradually become purified, little by little, and become happy. So at this point, we'd like to ask if there are any questions from the guests about any of the points from any of the programs. We'll be happy to try to answer. You can also ask in German if you don't want to ask in English. And if you speak a little slowly, I'll be able to understand you, probably. No questions? Well, that means everybody agrees fully with all of these points, 100%. And therefore, you're all going to just stay here tonight. And you're not going to go home, you're going to join? Okay, great. All right, get the hair clipper. Line them up. This is great. Boy, all programs should be like this. I joined Krishna consciousness like that, by the way. The person giving the lecture said, why don't you come and visit us in the temple? I said, great, can I get in your car? First time. So it's not rare, it happens. Those were other days. In the days of idealism. Wow. It's 9:45. All right, we'll bring out something for everybody to eat. Yeah? Maybe we could chant a little, but it's too late. No? This is Berlin. Okay. Shut the windows. We'll do a little more kirtan here.